The United Nations was established in 1945 to save succeeding generations from the scourge of war and to reaffirm faith in fundamental human rights, in the dignity and worth of the human person, in the equal rights of men and women, and of nations large and small. Prior to joining the United Nations, the State of Kuwait participated in the work of various international bodies. It gained membership in a number of international organizations such as the Universal Postal Union, UPU, the International Civil Aviation Organization, ICAO, and the Food and Agriculture Organization of the United Nations, FAO. 50 years ago, on the 14th day of May of 1963, the United Nations General Assembly adopted Resolution 1872, accepting the membership of the State of Kuwait in the United Nations, thus becoming the 111th member of the organization. This resolution reaffirmed the desire of the State of Kuwait and its total belief in cooperation and joint international action that are a basic pillar of Kuwait's foreign policy based on the principle of respect of the sovereignty and independence of states.
دولة الكويت التي استكملت استقلالها في 19 يونيو 1961 لتشعر بمزيد من الرضا بأن تمكنت في الفترة الأخيرة كسب ثقة واعتراف جميع الدول الأعضاء تقريبا، كما انضمت إلى ما يقرب من 20 منظمة واتفاقية دولية وإقليمية. وإن مساهمة الكويت في هذه النشاطات لا يدل دلالة واضحة على أن الكويت لم تكن تنظر إلى الاستقلال وبالتالي إلى عضوية الأمم المتحدة كغاية في حد ذاتها، بل كوسيلة للمساهمة في تحقيق حياة أفضل لها ولسائر شعوب العالم.
Since that day, Kuwait, with its voice now heard in the World Organization, was able to demonstrate from early on its effectiveness and occupy its place among the member states of the organization. It was elected member of the Economic and Social Council, one of the main organs of the United Nations, 3 times, the latest of which is the current term 2013 to 2015, in appreciation of its contributions to development at the global level. Kuwait was also elected as a member of the Security Council for the period 1978 to 1979, assuming its presidency in February of 1979. During that period, Kuwait demonstrated its support for justice and the rights of peoples to self-determination, as well as to efforts to establish and maintain peace. On the 27th of September 1990, at the height of the infamous Iraqi invasion of Kuwait, the late Emir of the State of Kuwait, His Highness Sheikh Jabir Al-Ahmad Al-Jabir Al-Sabah, stood before the United Nations General Assembly and delivered an address that moved its audience to tears and received a standing ovation from all the delegates of the member states as a sign of respect and esteem.
لذلك جئت هنا إلى هذا المحفل وهو دفة قيادة العمل الدولي، شاكرا لكم على هذا التضامن العالمي الساحق معنا، والذي تتضح معالمه في قرارات مجلس الأمن ذات الصلة، والتي صدرت بشكل لم يسبق له مثيل، ويشكل موقفا دوليا صلبا.
Kuwait will never forget the role of the United Nations in its liberation, nor will it forget Security Council Resolution 678 of the year 1990, adopted on the 29th of November of 1990, giving Iraq one final opportunity until the 15th of January of 1991 to demonstrate goodwill to resolve the crisis peacefully.
هذا القرار 678 أجاز استخدام القوة، أجاز للدول المتحالفة مع الكويت استخدام جميع الوسائل الممكنة لإرغام القوات العراقية بالانسحاب ولعودة الحكومة الشرعية للكويت.
Such proactive relationships as exists between the State of Kuwait and the United Nations have continued to evolve across different areas, most salient among which are the contributions of Kuwait to the various agencies, programs, and funds of the United Nations system, amounting to almost $50 million annually, in addition to periodic voluntary and assessed contributions, mostly in the development and humanitarian fields. Since its establishment in 1961, the Kuwait Fund for Economic Development has been providing development assistance and funding for infrastructure projects in the developing and least developed countries, totaling $18 billion, benefiting more than 104 countries in the various geographic areas of the world. The various visits by Secretaries General of the United Nations to the State of Kuwait represented a culmination of this relationship. The visit by Secretary General Javier Perez de Cuellar in 1993, in which he reiterated that the invasion of Kuwait was the first test of the will of the organization to preserve, after the end of the Cold War, international peace and stability. This was followed by a number of visits by Secretary General Kofi Annan to Kuwait, with a view to discussing bilateral issues of common interest, as well as the way to achieving security and stability in the region. The current Secretary General, Ban Ki-moon, also paid several visits to Kuwait, starting with his participation in the Arab Summit for Economic and Social Development, hosted by Kuwait in January of 2009. During that visit, he inaugurated Kuwait's gift to the United Nations, the United Nations House, a complex which accommodates all of the United Nations offices of the various agencies in Kuwait. His latest visit on the 30th of January of 2013 was to preside over the high-level International Humanitarian Pledging Conference for Syria.
لقد قررت أن أشارك في هذا المؤتمر وأن أدعو إلى التئامه إلى جانب صاحب السمو الشيخ صباح الأحمد الجابر الصباح أمير دولة الكويت. أود أن أتوجه بجزيل الشكر إلى صاحب السمو وإلى دولة الكويت على استضافة هذا الاجتماع رفيع المستوى.
This conference succeeded in securing pledges covering the amount equal to the United Nations appeal, totaling $1.5 billion to assist in the implementation of the United Nations humanitarian plans for Syria. The State of Kuwait perceives the United Nations as a guarantee for the rights of peoples and the means to address crises and foster understanding and friendly relations between peoples and nations. Kuwait continues to support the United Nations with its political and economic capabilities and efforts, as well as through its diplomatic moves to narrow the differences among states.